look who's back in town!
Welcome home, sis.
In a time of change, Aretha Gupta needs her own fresh start.
You should come volunteer for us. She could be our new volunteer coordinator.
Yes, she can. All right. Good luck, Aretha.
Okay, I need the number for City Hall, a map of Preston Park, and an inventory of campaign material.
Look at you, large and in charge.
But when love drops in unexpectedly,
Hi. You going here often?
Use that line often?
To new friendships.
Cheers.
it will come from the one place she never imagined.
You're the McCain volunteer coordinator?
You seem surprised.
Oh, Lord, if you had to suck face with a Republican, at least he's a cutie patootie.
Now, they're making the race hotter than ever.
The local Obama office better step up the game.
The Republicans are desperate, so they have to throw everything out there.
Democrats can be just as underhanded.
So you admit the Republicans are underhanded.
And it will push their relationship to the limit.
This is the worst time of year for a romance. Everybody's so hopped up on campaign adrenaline.
You set me up. You set yourself up. God, I love politics, don't you?
But if they can cross party lines,
So the rumor's true?
No one can know about this.
It'll be our campaign secret.
they'll find the best sides of themselves.
I don't meet all that many women that I'm interested in.
So it makes me so special.
The fact that you would even ask that question.
Experience a story that happened during a revolution.
Say something for the camera?
Yes, we can!
I've waited 85 years to do this.
She joined the movement to be a part of history. But now she'll discover that when fate comes calling, you can't pick sides. Malika Sherwa, Brian White, Loretta Devine, Jerry Bednow, and Ruby Dee. Politics of Love.
I have been waiting to interview this man. It's been several years now. I keep on saying, I've got to call him up. I've got to email him. I've got to get him on the show. And today we have him on the show. I'm going to just list a few credits first. Royally Ever After, Beverly Hills 90210, Saved by the Bell, Politics of Love, If Only You Knew. Wait a minute. If You Only Knew. Flower Shop Mysteries. He writes novels, he writes television, he writes for the Los Angeles Times. He's here today. Gary Goldstein.
David Zimmerman, how are you?
Hey. Did I say all those correctly?
You did. And yeah, very proud of you so far.
Thank you. I'm trying. I was going, oh my God, a writer, I have to say it correctly. Oh, as a matter of fact, since that just popped out of one of my brain cells, what is it like, let's say for actors, they say to actors when they're auditioning for shows, you got to stick to the script because the writer's in the room. Right. What is it like when a actor comes in and completely changes your words?
Well, hopefully not completely changing it. I've written a lot of plays and done a lot of work with a lot of actors in theater. Yeah. And one of the things that I've learned so much is that when you're in rehearsals with a play, let's say, you learn so much by working with a writer, learn so much by working with actors about what an actor can and can't say at a given moment. In other words, what you think you write a line and it'll flow off the tongue, but in fact it may not necessarily. And I've always been really fascinated by listening to an actor read a speech of mine, and it's like, I know it's not coming out right, and they'll be like, you know what, these two words are kind of hard to say together, and I just transpose them or change a syllable or whatever, and suddenly it flows. So I'm always really interested in that, and I like changing things so that it works for, as a writer, you just want what you write to sound and look as good as possible, for people to respond as well as possible. And particularly when you write comedy, I write a lot of comedy, every word, the accent on every syllable can make all the difference in terms of where you get the laugh. And there are times certainly where I've been on the set of a movie I've written, and I'm watching the actors do a scene and they're kind of reversing words. I've never been in a situation they just like make it up. But it's hard to remember all your dialogue, and sometimes they do, many takes and they get it at some point. There are script supervisors who'll yell out the right words. But let's put it this way: no writer generally ever writes something a certain way without really thinking it through and really figuring out why it should be said that way. And you write it I write for a certain rhythm, for a certain beat, for a certain kind of punchiness or whatever it is. And you just hope that can be duplicated. And, most actors do a great job with it. But like I said, I'm all for changing something if it means that it'll sound better and look better and make it more effective for an actor to say.
Right. That's good, a good lesson for actors and for writers. And I know that a friend of mine was on the set too, and he had a certain way that he spoke, and that happened on the set too. It's like, oh yeah, they were very open to changing it, as long as it still had that same oomph to it.
Right, and a lot of times, like an actor might read a piece of dialogue. Let's say it's a joke, and they don't necessarily get the joke. They're reading it, but I want them to ask, what does this word really mean? Or why is this funny or something? Because I've had experiences where they've been reading it and they're trying to, make it work and all that. And I'll say, did I write, and I'll put it on myself. I'll say, did I write that speech clear enough for you to work for you? And they'll go, well, I don't really understand what this word means. It's like, okay, well, that's fine. Maybe if you don't understand, other people won't understand. Let's change it and let's make it work. Let's find the joke for you that works best for you. So that's always very interesting. Writers, we work in a vacuum. It's just us and our computers and the voices in our heads. And it's great when you actually have an opportunity to hear actors read your words, and you really see there's a big difference between the voice in your head that's speaking it out and when an actor is trying to interpret it.
Well, and what you were saying, and this was one of my questions down the list here, but you came out with it in the sense of collaboration. That it's so important to collaborate in that way, and it seems that I think it's a must almost.
Yeah, well, good collaboration in writing, good collaboration, whether it's with a writing partner, whether it's with a producer, an executive you're working with, whether it's a director or the actors or whatever. The right kind of collaboration really takes something from can take something from a B to a B plus to an A minus to an A. It just, everything builds and grows. And I love great collaboration. You hope that people have good ideas. Nobody's trying to make anything worse. They're trying to make it better. Right. But you have to, as a writer, one thing I've learned over the years of doing it, you've got to be really open to the world around you and what people are trying to say to you, because they may not always say it in a way that you are actually understanding or interpreting. But if you really look beneath the words, and you try to filter it and figure out what's not working for them, you can find your own way to translate it and make it in your own words and make it work. I think writers, your initial response is always like, a defensive position or something, and it can't be that way because people are just trying to make it better. And if you disagree, you have the opportunity to say, well, I think that's an interesting idea. I don't necessarily agree. Let's try it your way once and see what happens. And you know what? Sometimes it works better. And again, it's all about it working better. If I'm working on a comedy and something becomes funnier because of something somebody says or does, I'm in. I love it, and I want the audience to be as entertained as possible.
Yeah. Now, you said you've been mentioning comedy. Right. So you lean toward writing comedy more than drama?
I seem to. I've written a lot of comedy in my life. I've written a lot of even stage plays that I've written that have drama to them or might be considered dramedies. There's always this sort of undercore of comedy, and it's not broad comedy. It's usually like that human comedy, that kind of recognizable comedy. The human foibles kind of thing. I mean, I'm not what's the word? It's not a punchline kind of thing necessarily. It's really more just like finding, kind of like turning something on its ear a little bit and finding the humor in a dark situation or whatever. So I've done a lot of that. I've written a lot of just straight on romantic comedies that it's all about the banter and being entertaining and fun and funny and but comedy in writing, comedy in movies or plays, whatever, television, it's really about the characters you create. It's not so much the jokes they tell or the words that they use or how they put two sentences together, but the character itself. When you write an interesting character with a lot of flaws and that are recognizable, and you can exemplify, you can show it. You can write some great stuff, just because you're working off of a great character, and the best thing in any movie or TV show, whatever it is, to see that character change, that they start off having these flaws, but we kind of like them, we're engaged in the character, we relate to the character, whatever, and we see them grow and change because of the circumstance of the movie, the people that they come in contact with and whatever. But there's a lot of inherent humor in just the mistakes that we make as regular people. And that's kind of what I try to find in mining stuff. I go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm taking you in, and you were talking about the comedy and the humanness of the characters, and as well as the characters. But I was looking through the titles of many pieces of your work, and your latest work, which is The Last Birthday Party.
Right.
It's a romantic comedy, but even the title of that, The Last Birthday Party, right away I go to it. It draws me in, and I've got to read this because I read it on your website, and I thought the review of it was exceptional. A novel so real, I kept expecting one of the characters to text me. All of a sudden, I looked at my phone and I went, "Oh,
it's great."
And then a poignant, honest look at a single cataclysmic event and the changes, the growth, and the recoveries that follow. You will think about The Last Birthday Party long after the final page. By Bruce Cameron wrote this from the New York Times. Yeah.
No, it's a great quote, and I'm really honored by it. And I love that whole idea of somebody's going to text me. I'll just give a shameless plug for my book, The Last Birthday Party. It came out last August. We've been doing really well. It's funny because I didn't write it to be an out and out comedy. I mean, I called it a dramedy, and then as people would read it, they'd go like, "This is really funny." And I was, well, okay, and I'm glad you're laughing, you're enjoying it, but it's like and now I just call it a romantic comedy because it's about midlife crisis and all this, but it is very much a romantic comedy. But the humor in it really does come from just the things that are recognizable in our lives. And also it takes place in LA. It's a Hollywood story. The character's a screenwriter. And so I've been able to mine a lot of that kind of very ironic stuff that I've been through. And some of it is really funny. Anything that's kind of serious, you can kind of look at in a funny way too, without being disrespectful to certain topics. But yeah, I have the main character in it. He's also a film reviewer for the LA Times, like I am. But unlike me, he ends up losing his job, and that opens up this whole Pandora's box of work activity for him, that like his life turns around, and he ends up resurrecting an old screenplay that he wrote. And he starts rewriting it, and it becomes very successful. He has a success off of it. And one of my favorite scenes in it, not to give too much away, is that he goes into the meeting with the executive who's shepherding the script for the streamer that he sold the movie to, and in walks the director of this film, the would-be director. He didn't even know that the guy was going to be in the meeting, and it turns out he's somebody who directed a film that the main character gave a terrible review to a number of years ago. And the director knows who he is and says, "Aren't you the guy who gave me that awful review of such and such?" And I've been in that experience. I've been in that, not in a different way with not in that kind of situation, but in other situations where you're faced with somebody who remembers you and remembers your name and says, "You gave me a terrible review." And sometimes people are very gracious about it, because I've been on the side of being badly reviewed by somebody, and I'll meet somebody, and it's like, I understand it's an opinion, and sometimes it's, people are very gracious about it. Other times people are not. And this was one of those, and I kind of put the two potential reactions together and put it in this scene in the book, and it turned out to be very funny. So when you draw on real life and you can mine those moments, you can get some good comedy out of it.
Is that where you get most of your creative bubbles from
real life? I hope so. I think real life, if you just look around, you just live enough, and you're out there enough, and you look at enough people and people we know. I mean, I've patterned many characters after people that I've known in my life who may not recognize themselves in those characters, but they were the kind of the basis for it. Because we're all quirky and we're all interesting and we all do things that are memorable. And some people are a little more out there than others. I've written about my father. I've created several iterations of my father in my writing, and he's no longer with us, but he was quite a character and had great turns of phrases that I kind of reuse. And he was just kind of one of these larger than life people. And he's given me a lot of fodder for fodder, whatever, for characters. But it's kind of what's out there. I watch people. I'll listen to things that people say. I'll write down dialogue that people are just saying to each other, it's just natural dialogue, and it's like hilarious. Who'd use words like this? And you find phrases sometimes that people use that are so colorful that, oh, I got to use that somewhere. So there's a lot of that. You draw from real life a lot.
Do you sometimes go out to lunch just to hear people at some other table?
No, but I do go in the supermarket and anywhere that I am. I definitely, and on my phone, I'll open up my notes app, and I'll type it in so I don't forget. And I keep a list of all that stuff, and occasionally I'm able to use it. And it's fun and it's colorful. I think, one of the things as writers, like I said earlier, we work in a vacuum. So it's so important to have input from the world at large and to really be paying attention to what's out there, so you're not always in your head, but you can get into the heads of other people. And part of it is staying fresh and contemporary with themes that are out there now and the way things are said now. I look back on old scripts of mine and I may think they're good and even still saleable and well written, but if I was writing it today, I would say things a little differently. I would approach things a little differently. Certainly, the world has changed in so many ways that not everything you did at one point is what you would do, what would be acceptable today, what would be considered smart or hip today. So that's a very important thing. Yeah, you're always drawing from the world around you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just there's so many things that are going. I'm hearing you say this and this and this. A couple of things came to my mind for those writers, those people who want to either write a script or a novel or even be a reviewer for a paper. Where would they start? Are there groups around? I've heard there are groups around like Los Angeles, but where would you say to begin?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when I was in college, I was I was a journalism major, and then I became what was called a broadcasting and film major. I went to Boston University. And the best class I took was Journalism 101, because it really taught me how to write very tight copy and to say the most in the fewest number of words. And especially in screenwriting, that it's very important in journalism, but especially in screenwriting, where dialogue is really all of that saying the most in the fewest words. If you're writing a novel, you have the flexibility to say more, to say a lot in a lot of words if that's what you want. But journalism, a basic journalism course to me is imperative if you're going to be any kind of writer. I just think it's so important, and you learn so much, and it helps you in your editing process and your thought process and all of that. Then I'm a big advocate of taking classes, screenwriting classes. I would vet them very carefully. There are a lot of, I wouldn't say charlatans, but there are a lot of I've taught screenwriting a lot. And what happens is that in screenwriting, you're selling the dream basically. And you have to be very careful about that, because people are sometimes so eager to succeed and do well that everything you say is taken so to heart that it's, you're not an oracle, as a teacher, you're just trying to suggest an effective way of doing something. And I was always kind of telling my students, just because I say it doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. It's worked for me. If you think it's going to work for you, then you try it. If it doesn't work, try something else. You have to be very, very careful with that, because and I'm sure you see it a lot with acting teachers. They're so, they're so black and white about stuff and so grand about things, when in fact, there are many ways to skin a cat. And it's very important to allow people the freedom to do what feels like it comes naturally to them, but give them kind of the track that their train can run on, so to speak. So that I would say anybody you're looking for a screenwriting class, vet the teachers, vet the group that's doing it, ask other people what they've thought of it. Is it productive? Do you want a class that you can actually finish a script in, or do you want a class that just kind of gives you the basics in screenwriting? I think writing a script in a class or with a group of people over a given amount of time is one of the great ways to get a script done, particularly in the beginning, because it's as if you're being hired to do it. I know when I'm hired to do something, I'm on a schedule and it gets done way more efficiently than if I'm just writing it for myself, because every one day can go into the next. And yeah, so if it's done, if I get it done, a week later, what difference does it make? Learning how to write on deadline, the adrenaline and energy that comes from that is very important. So yeah, I think classes are really great. There are great screenwriting books out there, and some of the classics. I love a book called How to Write a Movie in 21 Days. It came out years ago by Vicki King. It's a great book. It just breaks it down in the simplest way. It's so effective. There are really terrific books out there, older and newer. Get help. Do not do it on your own. If you've never written a script before, yes, you can read many scripts. You can watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of television, but I would say in the beginning, get some help. Don't do it alone. Don't do it in a vacuum.
Now, here's a question too that some people might ask. What about people who are afraid to take a class or get help because they thought, well, maybe somebody will steal my idea?
Well, that's always a big issue. And it's almost like when you're out there pitching an idea to a buyer, even if you're an established writer, you're pitching an idea. If you don't pitch the idea, nobody's going to know what your idea is. So you can register it if you feel that way. You can register with the Writers Guild, the Library of Congress, that kind of thing. But basically, out in the real world, out in a legitimate world, the world of legitimate studios and buyers and producers and all that, which is 99% of who you're going to be dealing with as time. If you're writing. My personal theory is that it costs so little to buy a writer out of an idea, particularly a new writer, that people don't want to take the chance. Why steal something? There are a million ideas out there. You also have to know that you're not the only one with the same idea. I had a laugh. I was thinking about talking to somebody about King Richard, the Richard Williams, Serena Williams.
I love that.
Venus Williams, great movie. And X number of years ago, just out of nowhere, I was pitching a couple of biopics to a producer who was looking for biopics, and I followed the Williams sisters, and I was like, they'd make a phenomenal movie. What a great idea for a movie. I never thought of it in terms of entering it through the eyes of the father, but it was an idea I had. I had a list of them, and I thought they would be fascinating to do a film about it, biopic about it. Well, it didn't happen then, and, but it did happen eventually. So if I said, well, I pitched this to so-and-so, I'll bet he gave it to them, and he gave it to them and got it to Will Smith. It's like, it just doesn't work that way, and it's so rare that happens. All that said, if you're the kind of person that does worry about it, and sometimes you do need to be concerned about it, and just because you need to be on top of everything you do, I just say, just register it. Make sure submit something through a lawyer if it's that kind of thing, but also just know there are not a lot of new ideas out there. I've written things that somebody else has another completely disconnected person has written and gotten made, let's say, and I had a script that was very similar, and it's like that person, this other person's script that's a similar idea got made, mine didn't. Maybe their script was better, maybe the timing was better. There aren't a ton of new ideas. And when you do have a very new idea, something that's so unique that people really can't say no to it, that's probably when they're actually going to pay you for it. But it's a bigger conversation, which is be very careful who you present material to, who you show things to. There are lots of fly-by-night people out there, especially if you're a new writer and you're not a Writers Guild member, let's say, or you don't have representation or something. You can be taken advantage of. So in general, you have to be very careful who you present your ideas to.
Well, Performing Arts Studio West, which this is going out to, and the Meet the Biz program and YouTube land. We have actually at Performing Arts Studio West many actors who are dying to get into voiceover, and in fact, we have a few animators too. But I did see, I looked online, and The Last Birthday Party is now on tape too, right?
It's an audiobook now, yeah.
Audiobook. And right. It was Gary Bennett narrated it.
Yeah.
How did you or did you choose Gary? Did you go
Yes.
through an audition process?
Not exactly. My publisher of the novel, called a publisher called Hadley House, they had submitted it to a audiobook company called Tantor Media, and Tantor picked up the book. They picked up the audiobook rights from us, and then they said, we will give you, we work with a lot of voice actors, you know, they've done like tons of audiobooks, and they said, we'll give you 3 voices, and see, you can pick the one that you think that you like best. And the sense was, and if you don't like these, there'll be more, you know. So they were very generous about that, because that's a world I personally don't have a lot of knowledge of. So I haven't listened to a lot of audiobooks. I certainly know enough actors with great voices, or excuse me, people who just have great voices, who could have done it. But, you know, that's this company's business. That's the pros. And I just, you know, I sold it to them, and I have to listen to that. So they sent me one voice to start. They said, we like this guy. Give it a listen. If you want to hear other voices, let's, you know, listen to other voices. I listened to this guy. I thought it was great. My whole thing with the book was, I just want it to be clear. You know, I want somebody who is just gonna, you know, because not every voice is always that clear, and you want somebody who's just got a voice that, you know, it's like a bell. You know, you just get it, and most voiceover people do. I mean, they're trained in doing that. Yeah. So I said, this is great. I love this guy. Let's just go with it, and we did. He did a beautiful job, yeah, it's very exciting. So now, for all the people, you know, what you do learn when you write a book is how many people don't read books. And you think I'm always reading a book, you know, I'm always in the middle of something, and I just, you know, I don't just assume that everybody reads books, but I'm in the book world so much that I'm around book lovers so much. And then when you're around people who just have gotten out of the habit of reading a book, whether it's a physical book on a Kindle, yeah. And, you know, attention spans have changed, and they can watch hundreds of hours of television, but, you know, there's something about sitting down and reading a book. And I learned that, and that was pretty interesting. But they're all like, I can't wait for the audiobook to come out. I'm gonna, you know, pop it in when I'm driving in my car and all that. Whatever works, you know, whatever works for people. You know, again, you just want people to experience it.
Well, I love audiobooks, because I remember when Katharine Hepburn came out with her autobiography, Me, I ran so just to hear, you know, especially, you know, autobiographies, to hear them speaking their own voice, I just love it.
Did she did the narration for it?
Me,
yeah.
It was called Me, yeah, by Katharine Hepburn. Yeah. So
that must have been great.
Oh, I have it on cassette. But, and the other one that I loved was Jerry Jewell's autobiography, and when she wrote it, they were saying, well, we're going to get an actor to voice it. It's like, what? Yeah. You want her voice? I mean, she has such a distinct voice.
Yes. Yeah.
And thank God she got to do it, because it's brilliant. And she knows she's been through all those emotional roller coasters, so it even adds to that. Right.
No, as an author, if you can do it, if you have the voice to do it, I think it's great if you can do it, because God knows at least you'll pronounce every word right. There's always that. Right. So I mean, novels, television, I mean, Forever Christmas, Rediscovering Christmas, If You Only Knew. Now, all 3 of those you wrote, but you also were a producer on the project. Right. How did that come about, and what are the perks for that? Well, it really varies from film to film. You know, there are all kinds of producers in the business. They're the creative producers. They're the people that bring money to the table, that get a producer credit. They're the physical producers, line producers. So the producer title can mean many, many things. I ended up getting a producer, for example, on Forever Christmas, which was in its first airing. It was called Mr. 365. It was written as a streaming film for a streamer called Passionflix, which is like a Netflix, but for women. Yeah. And it was produced through a Canadian production company. And I had the rights to the novel that it was based on. It was based on a novel written by a writer named Ruth Clampett. And when I read the book, I loved the book. And it's a story about a man who who it's about a lot of things, but at its heart, it's about a man who celebrates Christmas every day of the year. And he becomes the focus of a reality TV show. And they call him Mr. 365 because he celebrates Christmas 365 days out of the year. And then it's kind of like what happens from there. But when I read the book, I love the book. And it's like, this is absolutely a Christmas movie. And I had written a number of Christmas movies at that point, and wanted to, so I optioned the book. But it took a couple of years, took about 3-4 years of trying to sell it until I was able to set up the book as a movie, and then got hired to adapt the book myself. So because when you bring a property in, you are kind of eligible for some kind of producer credit. In that case, it was an executive producer credit, I think executive producer. So I didn't really do much beyond bring the book in, but I wrote the script and I had some say in some of the things, but it was not like I wasn't hiring the actors or doing anything like that. Sometimes it's just an extra perk and rarely, depending upon what the movie is, it doesn't mean there's even much money behind it or anything. It's just really to honor the work that you've done. On Rediscovering Christmas, I got an associate producer credit for a different reason. If You Only Knew was a feature film that I wrote that came out a number of years ago. And I got it on that for a different reason, but it's all because of sometimes it's like extra work that you do on a film that beyond the script that wasn't necessarily planned, but it just happens, and they do something to be nice. But I'm a writer at heart, and I do my own version of producing, just trying to find homes for different work, and my goal is just to get hired to write things that can get made, however that ends up happening, whether it's a pitch, whether it's having a book, whether it's having a script, whether it's being asked to do something, to write something. So really, whatever it takes.
Well, it's interesting too. You wrote many Christmas films,
right?
And you also, I wrote this note that you wrote a Memento Park, which is connected with the Holocaust.
Right. Well, I optioned a book. I found a novel a few years ago called Memento Park by a really wonderful writer named Mark Sarvis. And it's an amazing story. It's a fictional story, but it's kind of based in a certain amount of truth. And it's about an actor living in LA who is kind of drawn into this mystery about his family through a piece of art that's recovered from the Holocaust. And it's kind of the story about how he learns all about his family through the history of that painting. But it's also about the relationship he has with his father, who had escaped the Holocaust as a very small child, and how the painting was all kind of connected to that period of time. And it takes the writer back to Hungary, to Budapest, where his family is from, and all of all the layers of the onion that he has to unpeel to get to the bottom of why his father is so negative about this piece of art, and why he wants his son to have nothing to do with it, and not to inherit it, and not to take the money for it. It's almost like it's cursed, and it's kind of like he has to explain what it is. It's a wonderful book. Great part for an actor around 40, a crusty old dad about 80 or so. It's really a fine book, and so I've been trying to get that set up as a film that I can adapt. I've done a pretty massive outline on what I want the script to be. But that's what, I've optioned many books or attached myself to many books that I've read that I think have life to them, because I'm always just trying to find ways into getting things made. And if I find a piece of material that I respond to, and I would love to be able to adapt as a screenplay or TV pilot, and I think there's life into it, I'm always trying to expand the possibilities, and also work with other writers. Anytime I've worked with these authors, and now having written books, I'm so deferent to books and conscious. I've adapted many books into films, and I'm always trying to keep as much of the guts of the original book as I can, and as much of the dialogue that makes sense. Unfortunately, not every book is structured as a film.
Right.
So you have to kind of do a lot of rejiggering, a lot of compression. I'm actually right now adapting my book, The Last Birthday Party, into a screenplay. And it's a fascinating process because, I know every step of this book and every word, but I'm having to just cut, because you're trying to really boil it down to the essence of what we can visualize. And it's pretty interesting. So how do you cut down a book without losing the heart of it, but still keeping the story alive and the characters as vivid? And in Last Birthday Party, much of what goes on is in the main character's head. which is probably some of the most entertaining stuff in the book. So how do you bring that out? You have to kind of turn it into dialogue in some respects, or just lose it all together. But you want to keep the feeling of it. You want to keep kind of the vibe of what's going on in that character's head. And that, like I said, that's where a lot of the humor in the book comes from. So it's a fascinating process.
That's interesting. You said too, keeping it inside the character's head. It brought me to the film from the 70s, Up the Sandbox.
Oh God, Barbara Streisand. Yeah, right.
And I love that one about so much of it's in her head, but even the audience says, wait a minute, is that real? Is that not?
Right. Well, what they did in that movie has been done a lot is by visualizing what's in the writer's in the character's head, like showing the fantasy, showing it as a flashback, that kind of thing, which you can do sometimes. That movie was like so much in her head that I think it got criticized because it was just too out there, in terms of seeing too much of that fantasy. But it is another way to do it. I haven't done that yet on this book adaptation of Last Birthday Party. But what I'm trying to do is finish the script, see what I have, and then see how I can make it as cinematic as possible and as visual as possible without just transferring the words to individual scenes, from the book to the. And I'm also finding that a lot of words that I struggled with in the book to make perfect, I can't use in the movie. It just takes a completely different turn, and and I rewrite a lot of that dialogue. So as a writer, what's the expression? You have to kill your darlings. You have to sort of just get rid of anything that you may love, but if it's not going to serve the purpose of the script or the book or whatever, you gotta rework it and move on, and you use it at another time in something else.
That's so interesting, and you got me because I'm working on this documentary, and it's like you're so attached to everything, and you have like 60 hours of footage, and it's like edit.
Especially with documentaries, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it makes that really made me think about that as well. This is a two-part question. What is your biggest joy in writing? What do you like to do the most? I mean, you've written scripts, you like to write reviews, you write novels. What is your biggest joy in connection to writing? And then what is your biggest joy in connection to your life?
Good question. Big questions. Well, writing. The question always is, do you like writing, or do you like having written? There's something so powerful about, the work that, doing the work, it's work, but then when it's over and you can look at something and you can read it, it's like, oh my God, this is, I did this, and you feel so accomplished. So that part is fun. I love creating worlds and creating characters and being able to, to create dialogue and things that are in my head, being able to put it down on the page. And ultimately, I can't speak for all writers, but for me, I just love to be able to write something and to be able to share it with people and entertain people and maybe move people. I've written a lot of stage plays, and in those situations when you're actually sitting with an audience, and I mean, I guess it could happen if you're watching a movie in a big theater or whatever, but particularly there's something about live theater that's so different. And when you're sitting with an audience and you're hearing people respond, and you walk out of the theater in intermission or at the end, and they come up to you and they say what they loved, or what hit them, or what was so funny, or this happened to me, or how did you find that, or whatever. It's very gratifying, and it's just fun to connect with people that way. And because I know how much I love watching something that I connect with, or seeing something that moves me or is memorable to me. And it's just nice to be able to create that yourself and share that with people. So I think that's the great part of writing. I've been fortunate that I've had a lot of different things produced. I've been writing a long time, so just by virtue of endurance, you're going to get a lot of things produced, hopefully. But I encourage writers, because it took me a long time to kind of find my groove as a writer, and it just does. And I encourage writers to just keep doing it, to not give up. If you don't sell your first script, your second script, your third script, doesn't mean you're not a good writer. It doesn't mean you're not going to sell something eventually. It just means that it's not your time, or the timing is just not right for other reasons. And you have to keep doing it. So that's that. I mean, that's that part of it. And certainly writing, in writing the novel, and like I said, I finished a second novel that's coming out in October. So, the writing those has been incredibly gratifying and fun. And, partly when you're writing things, when you're just writing on spec, or it's something that's just it's just you. It's a different process than when you're writing it on an assignment, when you're working with other people, molding and crafting the story and all of that. They're both very, very enjoyable in different ways. And because when you're working with other people in a real situation, and you're doing outlines, you're getting notes, and you're molding the clay to get it to the point where you can actually write the script, you kind of feel like you've gotten some of the test answers before you've taken the test. That at least the script is going to have. It's been a lot of the story has been vetted. Whereas when you're writing on your own, you just don't know, and you can get notes from friends and other writers, but it's a little, you're going by the seat of your pants a little bit more. So there's that. And your second question was about life in general?
In life, yeah. What is your biggest joy in life?
I just, honestly, it's going to sound corny, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's just being here, being healthy, having, family and friends and love and a wonderful dog. And just, I feel so grateful, to have, and I feel grateful to love the work that I do and to be given the opportunity to do it. And like I said, it's only because I've gone through an endurance test, and I've just, stuck it out for so many years, to the point where, like, it's just, I hope I've improved as a writer, but beyond that, it's just, you just learn so much. I'm constantly learning. You're just constantly learning every day. It's crazy. Every project I do, it's like, you think you knew this already, you don't. It's just, and that's exciting, because there's always something new to learn. But just being here every day, and God, going through the pandemic and seeing what's happened to people, and people and all of that, and people who are perfectly healthy, and then they're gone. It's really one of those, you really start looking at the world very differently, and all of that. And so I just think it's being here and being able to do what I love, and having the health and the fortitude and wherewithal to do it. I'm just very grateful.
It's so true. It's so true. Every day that goes by now, you just being in that moment and feeling like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned different favorites and this and that. Since you write for the Los Angeles Times, and this might be a question that's too hard to answer, because I know for me it was. What is your favorite movie of all time? Since you review a lot of movies, is there a movie that you go, the first one that comes to your mind?
Well, I always say The Graduate, just because I love The Graduate. I think it's a great movie. I've seen it many times over the course of time. I saw it not that long ago. Still holds up really well. Speaks volumes about the world and people and class and romance and society and all of that. It's a movie from 1967, so obviously there are a lot of things that have changed, but I love that movie. I think it still holds up really well. One of my other all-time favorite movies is The Last Picture Show, the Peter Bogdanovich movie from 1971. Also a movie that I've seen many, many times, holds up beautifully. It's fantastic. Another one of my favorite, I can only give you favorite movies. I can't give you the favorite, because I can't insult all my babies, that I love. But I love the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which is just, with Ellen Burstyn. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm a big fan of, there are two comedies that I love to death, which is Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Risky Business, which are just, two of my favorites. I think Risky Business is not only a great comedy, beautifully made, but, just so the cinematography and the music, and it's just such a fantastic movie. I don't know what happened to Paul Brickman, who wrote that movie and directed it, but he did some stuff after that. I haven't seen heard his name in ages, but I hope he's out there doing something good, because he was just, I love that movie. I love a movie called Postcards from the Edge, based on Carrie Fisher's book. I could watch that movie anytime, any place. It's just hilarious. What else? I love a little movie called In Her Shoes, with Toni Collette and Cameron Diaz, based on the book by Jennifer Weiner. Shirley MacLaine is in it. It's a wonderful family story. Love that movie. I love a little movie called I love it so much I can't remember the name of it.
I know, I get that way too.
Amy Irving and Peter Riegert, Crossing Delancey.
Yes.
A great film. So there's that. Certainly from the past. I think Casablanca is a great film. I think Sunset Boulevard is really one of my all-time favorite older movies, from that classic period. Double Indemnity, they're great movies. There are movies that just so speak to me more from from as I got older, like, so like kind of grew up around them and sort of got older with them, speak to me a little bit more. But I'm a big fan of 1970s movies. I think they're really, they just never made them the same again. I watched Taxi Driver recently, which was really another one of my all-time favorite. Didn't quite hold up as well. It's a beautiful movie. It's so well acted, but the script didn't hold up as well for me as I would have liked, mostly because things have changed so much in the world that some of it was just a little, what would be considered pretty offensive today. But still an amazingly made movie, incredible acting, so much good stuff in it. But I love Network. Network's a great film. Network, if anybody hasn't seen it recently, just watch it. It could have been made yesterday. It's just, it is so frighteningly timely. It's a great film. So
I want to go down that window right now. But the neighbors might complain, as my mom would say. I remember meeting you at the disability scene,
right, the Writers Guild,
for the Writers Guild and their annual get together. How did you get involved with that?
Well, I've been a Writers Guild member for a long time, and I for many years I headed up the Writers Guild LGBTQ Writers Committee, and I was one of the founders of it, and was the chair for many years, and a co-chair for the last few years. And one of the events that we came up with was an event called the Gay Scene, and it became the LGBTQ scene. But it was basically people, Writers Guild members, sending in LGBTQ themed short scenes from movies they've written, from TV pilots, from a book, from a play, anything that actually said something in about 5-6 minutes. And we would vote on the 10 or 12 best scenes, and we would stage them, over the course of one night, with professional actors, and all the writers who direct the scenes, and we would just go one after the other, just read them in performance. And we did that for many years, and we haven't done it since the pandemic, of course. And then, other committees at the Guild started to do the same thing. So we had the Latino scene, we had the Asian scene, we had the Black scene, we had, there were lots of other groups that started to do it too, and put on some phenomenal nights. And then the Writers with Disabilities group wanted to do it for scenes that featured disabilities, which was such a great idea. And the chair of that committee asked me if I could work with them on it, because I had done it so many years, and they had been to our events, and they were just really fun. And they're feats of coordination. So after you've been through it enough times, that it's really I learned a lot, and I really want to share that. So I came on to work with them and help them organize it, and then I directed half this. Every year I come and I direct half the scenes. They have somebody else direct the other half of the scenes, which is so much fun. And I have to say that it really opened my eyes a lot to including disabled characters in things that I write. Or encouraging other people to do so. And also what I learned is that there's so many different kinds of things that are considered disabilities. I mean, growing up, what do we consider a disability? We considered blindness, deafness, those kinds of things. But there's so much now. ADHD is a disability. Depression is a disability, all those kinds of things. So we've learned a lot. It's really expanded the whole idea of what means disability, and how many people really do have one disability or another. So yeah, I got involved with it. I think I did it 3-4 years in a row. We did do it, as you know, we did it as a Zoom event last year, maybe the year before, maybe in 2020. But hopefully we'll all be able to start doing them again as in-person events. But it was great. Wonderful actors. The scenes were good. I actually wrote a few scenes that were in as well, that were performed, which was really fun to direct my own scene with for the group. And I love the people who run that committee. So it was a great experience. And then you came on as the casting director.
It was fun. It was fun. And they called me up, and I said, okay, and just dove into it. And
you had brought in some great people.
Love it. I love it. I love finding meat and potato actors, and with dessert too. I could keep on. There's questions are going on, but I do have to say again, the titles of your work. This magic moment. We have these magic moments. We have I even see love behind you, but then it's what's
This magic moment. That's a movie I wrote. Then I wrote a movie called Politics of Love. This was a Hallmark movie based on a screenplay I had written many years before, and I sold it to them ultimately, and we transposed it into a Hallmark movie. This is a movie that came out, it's about 10 years ago now, called Politics of Love. Let's see if we can get the whole thing up there.
right.
It's a rather provocative poster, but it was an independent film, so we could do what we wanted. And it's a really fun movie. It's available on Amazon. It's set right before the 2008. It was made after this, but it was set right during the 2008 presidential election. Set in this small town of Florida where the Democratic representative, the woman who runs the Democratic headquarters in the town, which is right across the street from the Republican headquarters in the town, they fall for each other. And right during the frenzy of the election, they have to hide their romance because it would look so bad. And it's a very, very funny movie. It had a great cast in it. It was Ruby Dee's, one of Ruby Dee's last movies. She played the grandma in it. We had really some terrific people in it. So yeah, it was fun. But yeah, like I said, I've written a lot of romantic comedies. So you end up with love and romance in the title a lot. But they're fun to write. And even the Christmas movies, they are romantic comedies, essentially.
Right. And, and the other title that came up to my mind too, when I read it, and then I read what it's about, April, May, and June.
Right.
And it's not the months, it's three women.
Right. Well, that was a stage play that I wrote. It was actually on 5 years ago, right now, the middle of March, middle of April, it was on at a theater in Beverly Hills called Theater 40, which is a great
and
theater.
You won 5 Broadway Award nominations.
Yeah, we got a lot of attention for it. It's a wonderful play. I was very, very proud of it. And it's about 3 sisters in their late 40s who are a year apart, and were named April, May, and June. And they convene at their late mother's house, the house they grew up in, to get rid of, finish packing up the house. They've done a lot of it. It's the last day that they're going to pack up what's left. And they discover something about the mother that they never knew in some letters that they unearth. And it completely upends their image of who their mother was, in a very good way, in a very intriguing way. And it's a story about how each of the daughters, they're very, very different women, and they each had very different relationships with the mother. And this revelation completely kind of changes a lot of their feelings, and ultimately for the best, about their mother and who that woman was, and the respect that they wanted to have for them. And they also heal their own relationships as sisters, as these 3 very different sisters along the way. So it was really fun. It was a great experience. It was definitely, like I said, it was one of those experiences when people came out of the theater, everybody was like, oh my God, I'm one of 3 siblings. I'm the one in the middle. I'm the older one. You got that right. And that was so funny. And it was really great. And I only have 1 sibling. I have an older sister, and I'm not from three. I have 3 first cousins who are sisters, and they're like 3 years apart, but I didn't really pattern it after them. It was just a creation. Actually, I came up with the title of April, May, and June before I did anything. I just thought of that one day. What a great title that would be, April, May, and June. And I said, what am I going to write that's April, May, and June? What can April, May, and June be? Before I knew it, I was writing a play about these three sisters. So yeah, it was really fun.
It grabbed me when I first read it, and then when I read the next sentence, I was like, "Oh, 3 sisters!"
Yeah, it's very fun.
One question that was asked in the acting class I used to take from the wonderful Corey Allen from Rebel Without a Cause and Star Trek: The Next Generation. The question that he would ask is, "What do you want the most at this moment in your life?"
Big questions. Well, certainly from a career point of view, I would like to be able to continue to do what I'm doing, continue to be hired to write things and continue to write things on my own and get them made and seen. I mean, I certainly love my book, The Last Birthday Party, to be made into a film or a TV series, limited TV series. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and being given, being given the opportunity to do it. because that's not always what happens, and especially as we go on in our careers, I've been very fortunate that my career has really kind of maintained itself over the course of time. Not everybody, that doesn't always happen. So I feel very grateful for that. And I want that to continue. I want world peace, which, if anybody's listening out there, I want world peace. So maybe that'll happen. I want everybody to be happy and end the divisiveness that we have and all of the terrible stuff that goes on out there. I kind of wish I could do something to heal that or make it better. It's very tough. Every day it's like, well, what's happening today? But from a personal point of view, I'm just very, happy and grateful for the work that I'm able to do, and the people in my life, and again being healthy. And I just want to continue it as long as I can, and continue doing fun interviews like this, and be able to chat and find people who actually want to hear about what I have to say, which is nice.
Well, it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Really good, really great. If anybody has if there are any aspiring writers out there, anybody has any questions, I'm reachable through social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Gary Goldstein LA, one word. Please feel free to reach out, send me a DM, or however you contact. And I also have a website, which is GaryGoldsteinLA.com, so you can reach me through that. And I just always encourage people to follow their dream, follow their bliss, whether it's acting, directing, writing, any kind of creative pursuit. If you want to be a stockbroker and that's your bliss, go do it. We go around once. And as somebody who had another career before they were a writer and left it early on, that gave me enough time to establish myself in the career that I ultimately wanted. I'm a very big proponent of making a change if you feel you need to do it. If you have the wherewithal, the resources, the support to do it, and you can make that change. It can be difficult, but you'll be happier in the end, because, like I said, we go around once. So follow your bliss.